are. How you doing? It's Friday. I think it's 6. Time is just going to start speeding up. I mean, we are into 2026 by about 40 days. Blink, it'll be half over. But it's going to be punctuated by wild stuff. So, I keep telling you, 10 years ago I was talking about the big splat, right? I said it was going to be punctuated by humanity's coming awake. Not being woke, but awoken. Being awake. Just like my email. If you want to get a hold of me, the email is thedudeawake42@gmail. Thedudeawake42@gmail. Anyway. Remember, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensie Owl Bob. Here we are, 1 minute and 37 seconds into the show. Welcome aboard. There's 2 people here. Let's see some thumbs up. This winter has been, we're on the East Coast. This winter is quite interesting. In Florida, on Thursday, I think it was below freezing. And in Alaska, it was 75. There is a big ridge coming down from the North Pole. On one side, it's toasty woasty. California is like in the 80s. Nevada, all those countries, everything up to the Rockies is warm on the west side, cold on the east. And boy, has it been cold on the northeast. Ooh-wee. Ooh, that's yummy. Hot chocolate. Can't beat it. The other one, coffee. And then you magically mix the two. So what makes this show really good is when the audience, you guys who are watching, make comments live, so I can respond. So, I watch a show called Cliff High. Most of his shows are on Substack, but he puts a lot of stuff on YouTube. There's another guy called Middle Nation. Very interesting guy. If you want to know what Muslims are like, smart ones, talk to him. He gives a very, very good perspective. We have to realize that Christians, Jews, and Muslims are all the same. They're all Abrahamic religions. They all come from the same place, Abraham. As the family grew, different elements. If you want to understand the biblical relationship with God and humans, read Romans, right? And Romans is a nice short little thing, but it's probably the best written, right? And it's probably written by Paul, where Mark, Luke, John, Larry, Mo, Curly, one of those guys, they were written by them, some better than others. Mark was very good because I'm sure he knew Jesus. As a little boy, I'm sure he was observing that. Because his remarks on Jesus are very personal, right? Whereas Luke, who is a Greek doctor, scholarly guy, was a scribe for the lawyers of the Torah, and that's what Paul was when he was called Saul, right? And he came from Rome. He was a Roman, right? Came from a rich family. See, the thing you got to understand that Israel isn't always in Israel, like in the Mideast, right? Like, and they're not all Arabs or Jews. No, there's a whole crew called Persians, and then a whole bunch of others called Africans. And they all had cultures way before Europe, way before Rome, way before Greek. When the English were running around in skins, the Persians had silk, had science, had math, and poetry. Anyway, so pretty much anything you think you know is zilch, right? But the relationship of God, right? And if you think you know what God is, some guy who's sitting on a top of cloud in a golden toilet, pinching a loaf on top of your head, not even close, right? You know, the trihead, you know, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, you know, you can't even handle that one. And that's the basis of Christianity, right? After Jesus rose from the dead, right, and he hung out with the boys for 40 days, they wanted him to stick around. He said, no, I can't, because I have to leave so the Holy Spirit can come into you. And it did, but not to the point where they could do really anything. I mean, as long as they, you know, stayed in the neighborhood, they were fine. And when they started to travel around and parse it out, it didn't work too well. That's why Paul was brought in. Now, after, you know, Judas left the scene, they had to find another person to put in. You know, the logical person would be Paul, right? But no, because the person who they put in there, I think it's Timothy or somebody, could have been Mo or Curly. But anyway, they all stayed in Jerusalem, right? And ran the bank, ran the show, right? And they were parsing whether you should have your wick dipped or clipped, right? So pretty much Jesus said, you know, when the Pharisees said, you know, we have like 8 million laws here by Moses. And Jesus, I thought he got them from God, the 10. What happened? How'd they get so many? Well, which ones? Which 1,000 laws are the ones you think we should rule? And he goes, well, first one, right? Have no false guides in front of me, right? Meaning only one God. And not just, because the Greeks had, you know, poly things. And you know, the Vatican kind of has that. They have saints, you know. You go into the Vatican, there's 8 million little chapels that everyone's lighting a candle for. So, and that's, you know, like the offering of the burnt offering, right? So, reality is, you are the burnt offering, right? So you read Romans, and the dialogue, and it's short and sweet and written probably the best. It's like, it is poetry. Not that everything rhymes, but everything strikes your heart. That's what poetry does. It doesn't rhyme. Open. It's about that time. It's 2:20. That's what time it is. Anyway, so what Romans says is basically, you're toast. There's no way, you know, through your acts, you could be perfect, you could be a saint, and you're still going to lake of fire. The only way is through God. God is the only one who can forgive you. The only way you can get that forgiveness is through Jesus' doorway, right? And once you get that going, that's when the Spirit comes inside of you. And that's when, it says it very particularly, forget about the past, forget about the future. That, in conscious intent, I am in the moment. Be there consciously with God's co-creation. That's it. So here we are, 2026. What does your eye do? You're talking about the nun-eye. The nun-eye sees all. The nun-eye sees you. The nun-eye knows all. That's what the nun-eye. Now, I got beat up by a nun. And she broke the orbit of this eye. And so it's been squished. So the lens is squished. So the receivers in the back kind of do this. So I see different frequencies of light and other energies. So I can see, I can look at a person and see what that's part of their tell to me, right? The other thing, they broke the little stirrup in my ear. So I really can't hear that. I mean, if you ever see me talk to anyone, I'm always got this ear to people, right? This one is like Doppler radar. I can find people in the woods. They can be a quarter mile away. I can hear them, and I can say, they're right there. Or they're right there, right? And also, that nun crushed the larynx in my throat and my breathing tube. So that's why I speak a little Spanish. And it kind of enabled me to not be, I couldn't speak, right? So I was very blessed. Cardinal Cushing put me into this Maryknoll sanctuary, wasn't a school or a college or a place to make nuns or priests. No, it was a place of unconditional love and study and meditation, prayer, and healing. And so, I had so many things wrong with me. I was $8 million. We have the technology. We can put them back together. That's kind of what happened. So I have, my whole life has been one of trial, tribulation, suffering, but on the other side, all of that has brought me to understandings that most people don't have, and have been giving me gifts, appreciations that most people don't have. So that's what that art can do. That's what that ear can do. And that's what my voice can do. Right? So, because I was so traumatized, I had a severe stutter, which I still have. But they showed me how not to stutter. And what is that? I always thought the Vivian Lee theatrical motif of remembering your character, right? What you're going to play, what you're going to say, what the script is, right? That's why I know everything's a script. I can see how good the actor is. Donnie's not such a great actor. He can't even read the teleprompter. They hadn't rewired his brain. Anyway, they kind of put engrams of Roy Cohen into Donnie's head. After Roy was about to pass from AIDS. But he wasn't gay. He wasn't gay. And if he was, there was something else. Just ask Jerry. And George could stand up. Nothing wrong with that. So, we're in this very interesting year where you can become anything you want. You can be the decider. Well, what you have to decide is to be love's co-creation. You have to decide to serve as a doula. And if you know what doula means, in Greek, doula means slave. Not like cleaning the toilet slave. I mean totally a gabby love doula. If you can be that, and you're a chucklehead, God knows this, just do your best. You can't be perfect. What's shaking bacon?
What's shaking bacon?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one.
No, how about easy peasy? So, anyway, I still have my salad. Mm-mm. Big jumbo slice salad, $8. Some coffee, that's all. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. But I have no teeth. Mm. I'll chew that again. Arr. So, here we are on the 6th of February, and this is Black History Month, and that's getting erased. But you can't erase things like that, because that history is still there. Even though if all those books are taken out of the library, all that has happened. And that's the interesting thing. Time isn't what you think it is. It isn't linear and going in one way. And how do I know that? Because you look at people, like Newton. He developed all these constants: gravity, time, light. I mean, he didn't get those, but he kind of started people down the road of that. And he said, if we have constants, we can then say that science is right and everything else is wrong, right? But as our technology got better and better, instead of just dropping a ball or this, and oh look, that's gravity, right? But we now have instruments that can measure it, to the slice of a particle. And what we are starting to realize is that all the different constants that we said were constants and that we based E equals mc squared on, they changed between 1947 and 1958. They dropped by 20%. Not all the same, but a big measure, not like 0.00%, but all those constants changed. And so they go, why'd that happen? And so that's where they got the idea of dark energy and dark space and dark light, and because then you could say, oh well, so because this constant has done this, it means X amount of mass is in the universe. Oh, it's changed. How did that happen? Well, if it's dark matter, then you just figure out what's the difference and say, oh, the thing is, there's this much dark matter. So. And that's what Epstein was doing. Epstein, for 30 years, yeah, he was getting dirt on everyone and blackmailing everyone and doing economic favors for everyone. Basically, the Khazarian mob, that's who he worked for. Go check that out. Who is the Khazarian mob? Where did they come from? And when the Tsar put his foot on their neck in the 1300s, or 800s, just when the churches kind of split, about 100 years after that, he said, listen, stop this. Stop being, because they were the first guys to have a caliphate, right? The Muslims didn't have a caliphate. The Christians didn't have a caliphate. The Jews didn't have a caliphate. They kind of did. All of them did, kind of. They had books, they had laws, they had rules, right? But not a caliphate. But that was, the land pirates, who were the Khazarian mob. They would take over a chunk of property by force because they could. Usually on the Silk Road or someplace that had money but didn't have an army. And, they'd rape, pillage, take everything, right? And then they move on. And that's kind of what Donnie is doing. He's kind of bringing that back into style, but that never went away. Europeans did that all the freaking time. That's what was imperialism, right? When they went to Africa and India and North and South America and took what they wanted to take because they could, because the Pope gave them a rule, a papal bull stating, if you show up someplace, no one knows it's there, you come on it, and there's people there, if they're not white and they're not Christian, you can kill them and take their land. And that's what we've been doing. Praise the Vatican. The biggest bank. The second biggest bank is the City of London, owned by the cockroaches. But the Vatican's owned by the cockroaches too. So go read Joseph P. Farrell. You know, how did the Nazis in less than 3 years kill 60 million Russians when they were getting shot at by those Russians? How did they do that? Did they use bullets? Did they use swords? You know, tanks or horses? How did they do that? Atomic bombs. That's how they wiped everybody out, right? And what happened was just what was happening to Russia. Germany ran out of soldiers. They were producing more weapons at the end of the war than what they did at the beginning. So they were bringing a nuclear weapon to the Japanese when the Americans kind of got on their tail, and so they gave up and said, listen, here, we have a couple of tons of weapons-grade uranium. We have these light triggers, meaning one of the problems with an atomic bomb, about 7,000 things need to be done at the same instant. And if you are waiting for some switch, it's not going to happen. The Germans made these optical triggers to go in the speed of light. They gave them those. They actually gave them the little boy bomb was saying, should have a swastika on it, right? Now the plutonium bomb, which was in a lot of ways easier, all you needed was a lot of reactors cooking away on uranium, and one of the byproducts was plutonium. So that's a short history of our nuclear weapons. And the Nazis were involved in it the whole friggin' time, right? I mean, what's his name? The head of Oppenheimer. He went to, if you go watch the movie, he spends a whole bunch of his scholastic time in Germany, studying with the greatest German physicist that was there, right? Who invented the German atomic bomb. And he was heading towards the German hydrogen bomb, right? That's where they were having the heavy water facility, right? But if you read Joseph P. Farrell, he's got, at least 40 books. Really smart guy. Went to all the big-time English universities, right? So, anyway, so, come on. What are the questions you want to know? So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I hear you saying, what's going to happen? So, we're going to have some pretty crazy weather between now and end of April, right? It's going to get... West is going to get warmer and warmer, like in the 80s and 90s, in California, Nevada, all of that place, and having more of those, aerial rivers, so lots of flooding, lots of houses, flying down the hill, and then somewhere end of February, March, the weather's going to snap back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I mean snap like a light switch. Like tomorrow it'll be 60 here, and then that evening it'll be 20 degrees below zero. And then get colder and colder and colder, and then snap back to 70, like 2 days later. So good luck with that. That happened the other night, where it was, we got snow over the weekend. Went like an inch, no more. And then on Monday, it kind of, or is it Monday? Might have been Monday, who knows. It kind of rained. And then it snowed, and then it rained, and then it went down to minus 20 degrees. So when people went to bed at night, it was, 40 degrees and raining. When they got up, it had snowed, and then iced, then rained, and then went down below minus 20. So they get out and they're on the interstate, and that has been salted with brine, the liquid they spray on there. So it wasn't like an ice skating rink. They got off onto the 4-lane that goes into where, the malls are, where the hospitals are, where the universities are, where the office buildings are. Where you get off that highway between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. maybe 100,000 people come off that onto the 4-lane that goes into the Tri-Cities, and over 400 cars took that corner at, it says you're supposed to be 25. They did it at 40 because that's what they always did. The thing went tumble down the hill, smashed into the oncoming traffic on the 4-lane on the other side, and then other cars didn't even see it, made it down, got on the 4-lane, was doing, they're supposed to be doing 35, they're doing 50. The light turns red, they hit the brakes, they slide right through the red light doing 50. One big chunk of traffic is trying to get across there to go into the office building complex. And they smash into them. The interesting thing is, when that first episode started, it kind of smacked up 100 cars and got, fire trucks there and ambulances there and hospitals were right there. People kept doing that. And they have, right at that thing, they have one of those big boards that some guy in the Capitol can hit buttons and, hey, slow down, ice on the highway. Did they do that? No, they had it. Did they do it? No, 400 cars. Close to 600 people, from seriously, no one died, but from seriously to just kind of. And that was just one day of that. Wait till that happens 3 times a week for the next 3 months. People are so stupid, they'll keep doing the same thing, which is a great thing, because get rid of those stupid people. Maybe more should die, Just like, Donnie took out a sledgehammer to, the deep state, which was basically the U.S. federal government, right? And so, a good example is AID. That was international aid for the United States. That's, all those bags of wheat and corn and soybeans that had the American flag. This is a gift from, right? It's called soft power. Well, Donnie just pulled a plug on it. And, Leon Husk, commonly known as Elon, what's his name, the cardboard cutout of the smartest guy in the world, the most richest guy in the world, and not really. You ever seen him on the stage with a chainsaw? Anyway, Elon just, and the douche kids, all they did for a month and a half was go into places like the IRS, Social Security, and the VA, national laboratories. It didn't change the laws, didn't fire people. They just went in, unplugged the servers, walked out with all that data. And then Elon took all that data down to his big brain in Memphis, being, run on gas turbines, run on bunker oil, and using up all the electricity. So the poor people, literally Memphis, the poor state in Tennessee, those people who were paying, maybe $50, $60 for an electric bill, and now paying like $600 for an electric bill because Elon's using up, but he needs more. So his big Opticon is just basically his flash drive. So he's dumped all that stuff in there, and now he wants to, with SpaceX, he put SpaceX and his Digital X together, and X, the website, he's going to put it up in space with big solar panels, so you don't have to worry about the power or the water, because anything in space that is like in its shade is like absolute zero. So you've got the refrigeration and the power all done. Plus, the other side of this, you put all of that data up in space where no one can touch it, and then you perpetrate a economic, electrical, digital collapse of the world. No one's their cell phone gone. All of my shows, gone. And that's why I keep telling you guys. Go watch. I have over 3,000 shows. Go watch them. Thank you for wishing me a great day. Right? Today, like every day, is my birthday. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday. Every day. Every day, every day, every second. I am born again. That's what being born again is. You are there with Jesus in your heart. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. So, this digital collapse of everything, electrical collapse too, it will be very simple. 2 or 3 EMPs set off around the world, that would be it. The world would have no electricity, no digital anything, and it's not coming back. Everyone goes into chaos, Mad Max, the whole thing. Right. And, when you hear Jesus talking about, who will inherit the earth, the meek, the people who don't have a gun, the people who aren't. I was a conflict police officer for the New York City Housing Authority for about 18 months, right? And I got in it through doing the housing thing that we did in Lower East Side. And I kind of got the city off our back, the state off our back, because we took these buildings over and I put, legal electricity in all of them. And, the people had electric bills, so when the marshal came to throw them out, they couldn't because they had an electric bill. And they had this other thing from the court saying that we had used the Homestead Act of 1876 to legally take the buildings. And the person who's in that apartment, that electric bill is on their name, they own that apartment. So we had a credit union, right? Because no bank would take our money. We were redlined. And so anybody who had an apartment, basically could put what that value was. So we went and looked for the most expensive condo in Manhattan at that time in the 70s. And, you go uptown, the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, one of those condos, at about $900,000. I mean, a big, right? So we said, okay, that's how much is this abandoned building apartment is worth. And we would put that into our credit union on their account. And we would pay them 12% interest on that, right? And if they were a member of our credit union and they wanted to borrow a tenth of the value of their asset, they could, if they wanted to start a business or send a kid to college, right? So the other thing we did was we taught all these people trades, contracting, carpentry, how to set a door, trim, put sheetrock on, put roofs on, plumbing, electric. We basically, because we weren't going to do it for them, they had to fix up their own place, had to bring it up to code too. They only had X amount of time within the construct of the Housing Act, the Homestead Act of 1876. They had like 10 years or something. So anyway, we got everyone up to snuff within a couple of years. And then, in reality, those apartments were worth something. And then they got jobs, and they because if they put their paycheck into our credit union, they were getting 12% interest on that. You put that into Citicorp, you got 0.03% interest, right? So they were making book. So that's how. In 2011, when I went back to New York, I left New York in '88. When everything was going fine, they didn't need me, and I had already been this conflict resolution officer for 18 months, and I nearly died a couple of times, got shot twice, and everyone said Al has to leave town. And my boss kept saying, Al, stop him, because I would walk into rooms without a gun, without anything, like in shorts, Hawaiian shirt. I'd have my badge and my little ID thing around my neck, so police wouldn't shoot me. And I go there and negotiate, bring it down, because my partner, she was the angel of death. Nobody wanted to, have her as partner, because she was, Lethal Weapon, that was her. You know, the idea of that movie came from her. That was her. She was more lethal than what's his name. Anyway, so I've had a lot of skill sets. Right? I've experienced a lot of stuff, and that's what gives me the gravitas to tell you what's going down. Right? Because I've seen it going down. I've been a photojournalist. I've been in war zones. I've been all over the world doing that. I've been a psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologist, right? I'll bring my curriculum vitae next time and show you pictures. So this is the life you can have. If I keeled over right in front of you today, it'd be great because I've had a great life. Yes, when you pick it apart and say, my God, you know, the first 12 years of your life, you were in the hospital more than you were running around. This is true. So I got to knowing so I right now have diabetes. I have Charcot legs. I have diabetic legs and feet. I have, you name it, I've got it. Heart disease, you name it. And yet I lost 240 pounds. Wilford Brimley, that's me. So, review. I love it when people's things are held in review. Whoever you are, I don't forget. Thumbs up. Whatever you're saying that is being in review. I wish I could, because if I look at it now, I have to stop the show. And they won't let me look at it after the show is over. It's like, really? It's a catch-22, as I say. Let's see, how much time do I have? Oh, I probably have 20 minutes, give or take. So 2:48, so by 3:15, I'll have to go. Because my passive-aggressive device here gets very upset when the show ends with the battery. You know, it takes them a week for the show to go up. So this show, normally, it comes into a place where I can put it up the next day, or if it takes long, for some reasons, whatever time I do it in, sometimes instead of tomorrow, the next day. But that's close enough. There's 3,000 shows you can watch and put on a thumb drive. Or better, a CD-ROM. Because that's optical. Even if electricity goes away, even if the internet goes away, and every silicon chip is fried, that CD-ROM will still be read. You might keep the reader, you know. That laptop that has the CD-ROM reader, you keep that.
How's it going?
Anyway, still got salad to eat.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name's John.
It's the inspector. No one opened the door for anybody. Anyway, so the weather's going to be pretty off the charts, and then the hot and cold is going to switch between California, like end of February. They're going to have like a freeze like they've never seen, and it's going to be 80 degrees here. Then the next week it's going to be 80 degrees back there, and 20 degrees below zero here. So it's going to be, go watch the movie the day after tomorrow. That's where we're heading. That's where we're going. That was made almost 40 years ago by my good friends Art Bell and Whitley Strieber. Whitley has he has Communion, which is an interesting book, but the ones I like better are Gray and 2012. Whitley Strieber. Go look those two books up. You'll like them. Go look up Joseph P. Farrell's books. You'll like them. Go look up Cliff High, his YouTube and his Substack. He's off the hook. Go look up dark journalist. He has a perspective. What he's very good for is giving you avenues to go down the rabbit hole. Don't believe what he says. Don't believe a word I say. Don't believe a word anybody says. But don't disbelieve it either. Go check it out for yourself, right? And why I love Donald Trump is because whatever he says, he's going to do. What he said, running. I mean, he told everyone everything he's doing now. He said that back in 2015, and he'd been saying it, since 2008, since Obama. Well, I'm not quite sure when he started being game show host of The Apprentice. But I bet you that's when they put Roy Cohen's brain inside of Ronnie's head. That's a good salad. Anyway. I love me my croutons. Anyway. So when you look at geopolitics, you have to go all the way, well, to Mesopotamia. Go read Thucydides. Because he laid it all out. And there were lots of people in between that put down some pretty good, interesting things, and under history, Alexander the Great, the Roman Empire, everything in between then and now is pretty much in Romans. And Acts. Acts is another good one. Not written as well as Romans, not quite as short, but still, for all the action that happens in Acts, it is like one, you know what's like? Acts is like an episode of South Park. So, go watch the last season of South Park. Of that, what they basically did, I don't know, 10 shows or so of the first, 10, 15 weeks of Donnie. So go check that out. Then compare it to Acts in the Bible. And all these eschatologists, the end of days scholars, they actually invented a name for it, eschatologically, right? Jesus, when they said, "So Jesus, before you go, before you leave the building, when is the end of times coming?" He said, "I don't know. Above my pay grade." And he's God. Above his pay grade. So, if you read Romans, you basically see God saying to everybody, listen, you're all toast. There's nothing you can do. You are sinners. They keep going, when you eat salad with no teeth, you have to eat it like a cow, but I don't have two stomachs. So I have to chew it up, then spit it out, chew it up again, spit it out. It gets you to enjoy your meal a lot more. Everything is a lesson put into construct with God's love, right? So that's what it's about. So, what else can I tell you? Oh yes, wars and rumors of war. So that's what we're living through right now, right? And you know, we had a good observance of war, Russia and Ukraine. That should have never happened. You know, Putin had 20 years to deal with that, but he didn't because he read the script. The war wasn't going to happen until right now. And he had overwhelming resources, people, men, tanks, you name it. You know, he had like 30,000 tanks. They have like 3 left. And Ukraine took them out with, you know, Radio Shack drones. Now, how did that happen? You know how that happened? Because Israel, not so much Israel of the Hebrew nation, because that doesn't exist. The Israel that we have is a corporation, and it's corporate. You know, like how you have Facebook, but it's owned by Alphabet. What is that? Is that Google? Not quite sure, but anyway, something like that. So the corporate thing of the oligarchy that's in power in the Mideast and in the United States and in England and in every place where what's his name, Jeffrey Epstein, he was a Mossad cutout if there ever was one. So he basically, you know how the Nazis always went, we don't like Jewish science. They weren't like talking about the Hebrews. They were talking about the Khazarian mob. Now, don't believe anything I say. I'm just a chucklehead. I'm an old guy here on YouTube. And now, I am part of the Hebrew tribe. You know, I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, between 1974 and 1984, right? And my landlord was Rabbi Ratner, and he was one of the 3 most powerful rabbis on the planet, not just in Brooklyn. He was a Hasidic, he was at the top of the Hasids, right? And also Lubavitcher, right? And also the Ananashki. They were all there in Williamsburg, right? And they all controlled the money and the power and everything, right? And, you know, I came back from Ireland, hanging with Archie and the old crone, and basically, when I came back to New York, you know, I was couch surfing at friends' apartments, right? And these old girlfriends and stuff like that. See, the thing of me, I have had many, many, many women in my life, and I never, ever mistreated them. I always respected them, listened to them, enjoyed them, cherished them, and saw them as my comrades, not as some product or some property. No, my comrades. And so I still have, you know, 100 or so friends that I've had for 50 years. Like, you know, they call me up all the time and saying, happy birthday to, because I've been telling them that my birthday is every second of the universe. So these things keep popping up, and one of them was about geography, right? So geography is just basically whoever has the most power makes a map on a napkin with a crayon and says, that's it, that's you know, that's the border. So you ask all the Indians who are native indigenous people who lived in North South America whether they belong to this country or that, you know. No, sorry. That was invented by the Europeans, not them. So And they didn't have armies, they didn't have wars, but they had commerce, they had art, they had culture, they had science, they had spirituality. From your neighborhood. Which neighborhood? I belong to so many neighborhoods. We're talking about Tennessee, or are we talking about North Carolina, or are we talking about Brooklyn, or are we talking about Ireland, or are we talking about Paris? Are we talking about Athens? Anyway, I love all music. I don't care what genre or anything. It's how beautiful it is. Sounds, you know. If you are good at what you do, I love whatever you do. Brooklyn. There's so many great musicians out of Brooklyn, especially now. Brooklyn is a friend of mine, Sarah Ferguson, helped put together the Brooklyn Academy of Music, right? And then after helping to put that together, she put together a whole bunch of other great, because, you know, I was the first guy, I can't say I was the first guy to live in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, but one of the, you know, first 10, let's say that. And when I came back from Ireland, I was couch surfing, right? And in my thing, I would pick up the Village Voice, and I'd look in a section of real estate, you know, things to rent, right? And I saw this ad that said, artist lost for rent in Brooklyn, phone number, right? Call up the phone number, and the guy goes, are you an artist? I said, yes. Do you want to loft in Brooklyn? I said, yes. And he goes, I said, I'd love to take a look at whatever you got right now. He goes, not today, I'm busy. But tomorrow at 1:30, take the subway and take the J or the M over the Williamsburg Bridge and get off at Marcy Avenue. And as you're coming over the bridge, look south and you'll see a building on fire. And, come off at Marcy, go down to Roebling's, go to Broadway, go down, that street where the fire is, and I'll be there. You know, I'll be the guy in the black coat and a hat, big beard. And I said, oh, so you're busy with the fire today? He goes, oh, no fire today. Fire tomorrow. But come after 1:30. And I'll be waiting for you in front of the burning building. And I said, okay. So I do. I'm kind of going over the bridge around 1 p.m. and there is a fire down there, right? And that whole neighborhood, South 11th Street, 10th, 9th, everything from Roberto Clemente up to Red Hook to the river to Roebling's it looked like the 9th Air Force had bombed it out, right? And there were a couple of big factory buildings, and the rest of those burned out buildings were tenement apartments that burnt out. There's a few still left, but most of them burned to the ground. So from Roebling's all the way to the river, from Broadway all the way to Roberto Clemente. Anyway, so I get off of the subway, I go down the steps, I go on Broadway 1 block, turn left on I'm on Roebling's, walk down 5 blocks, burning building. There's a guy in a black coat, black hat. And there's a fireman, and there is 2 guys in suits with briefcases. And and then there's this other guy who's kind of, Hasidic, but he looks like he's wearing a suit, right? He's like caught between being a lawyer and a rabbi, which are almost the same thing. So basically, I'm walking up and I'm watching this, and I see the big old guy with a white beard and kind of like mine, and the black hat, kind of like mine, and a big black coat, but I'm wearing an orange one. He basically is opening up the briefcase of the person to his right, taking out an envelope and handing first the fireman envelope. Fireman hands him a big, legal size envelope, right? Puts it in that guy's briefcase, right? Then the other guy, again, pulls out another, smaller envelope and hands it to him, and that guy hands him a legal size envelope, puts that in it, right? And, I'm getting closer and closer. By the time I'm 2 blocks away, there is the third guy is walking away. So it's just the rabbi and his associate, right? And I woke up and he turns around and goes, "Oh, right on time. I like that. So you're the artist looking for..." I said, "Yes, and you are?" He said, "I'm Rabbi Ratner. I'm the head guy here." I said, "Good to meet you, Rabbi. Let's go." So we walked 4 blocks up towards Roberto Clemente, right where I think South 11th Street is, or 12th, or whatever that is, that on the other side of Roberto Clemente, and Roebling's, and this big, gigantic building that takes up the whole freaking block. But when I kind of look at it, it's like 5 or 6 other buildings kind of squished together, right? And they are. You look at them, you can see they're like different architectural things, but someone at some point tried to smudge concrete over everything and make it look like one big thing. So anyway, we walk down that street, and there's a little teeny house right across the street from it. And he goes, "That's the first factory ever in the United States." And I go, "Oh." But it looks like a little house. It has bars on it. And I just go, "Hmm." And he goes, "That may be for rent, right? It's got 3 floors and a basement and a backyard that's kind of bricked in, and it's kind of cute. It's like the size of a pizza. You know, if you want a lot of space, I got the place for you." So we get on the loading platform. It's a big black hole, right, where on the right, this roof over the loading platform, and he pushes the doorbell, and you hear this bell. You know, so he's pushing it. And then you hear the and all of a sudden this thing comes down, and it's like a moving floor. No walls, just a moving floor. Stops right there. It's a big, gigantic black guy. I mean, gigantic. And he goes, "This is Kirby, the super of the buildings here." I said, "Hi, Kirby. I'm Al. OWL." And he goes, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And so we go up to about the 6th floor. We get off this big, long hallway. And we go to the end, and there's the staircase that goes all the way down. But there's still another floor that goes up. They go up there. And we come out on a little, you know, open the door, and there's a hallway. And we go to the end of that, open that, and there's this gigantic space. I mean, like an aircraft carrier. Like, not the flight deck, but the hangar deck of an aircraft carrier. It's like 230 feet wide, like 700 feet long. The ceiling is 30 feet high. It's like gigantic space. And I'm like, whoa. I said, "How many square feet is this?" He goes, 18,000 square feet. And so, and it's got windows on every side, and you look out to the south, and you can see you see the whole harbor, the World Trade Center, you can see the Statue of Liberty, right? And the Atlantic Ocean, and that way. All those windows, big, gigantic windows. And most of them are broken out, and the wind is coming through, because it's still kind of cold. I'm not quite sure what, I think it might be in the fall sometime, maybe October, November. Anyway, the other way is this amazing view of Manhattan, and the Williamsburg Bridge is there, and the Manhattan Bridge is behind that, and the south one is on the Brooklyn Bridge. And so I'm like, wow, this is and the Manhattan Bridge, then the Williamsburg Bridge, and then Triborough Bridge, and then whatever. So looking at all this, it's like, and so we're walking to the wall over there, and so this big brick wall, and there's one of those fire doors, you know, big heavy metal thing full of asbestos and on a rail, and it kind of goes this way, right? It's got a weight, so it kind of does that, but you click that weight off, the thing will slam shut. Anyway, so we walk there, and we push that over the side, and we walk in, and there is this really beautiful oak floor, windows all the way around with the same view, but not 18,000 square feet. And there's step up, and there's a whole nother floor, but it's a step up, right? But then there's a staircase that goes up, a spiral staircase that goes up. And I said, "How big is this?" He goes, 3,000 feet. So I'm looking, it's really, and it's all open. There's no walls whatsoever except the building walls, right? And I'm looking at it, and it's kind of a trapezoid shape, not a square, not a rectangle, trapezoid, right? So I'm looking at this thing, and there's a bathroom over here, so there's drainage, there's water, and he goes, there's no real electricity here, and I said, oh, okay, whatever. So I go upstairs, but there's all these windows, so it's really bright. I go upstairs, and the ceiling is a pyramid, right? And from floor stairs up, and from the floor at top of the steps to the ceiling, it's another 40 feet. I mean, it's like a cathedral almost, but small. That square is, and it is a square. I mean, like a Masonic type of square. I mean, true square, right? Where the pyramid has this roof, and each four sides has a big gigantic window, and each freaking window is a stained glass window of a Masonic episode. I'm going, and then there's a door that goes out to the roof, the flattish kind of roof of 1,800 square feet, so you could have a soccer match out here, right? So I'm going, okay. So we walk downstairs, and he's found two like folding chairs, I don't know from where, and we sit down, and I go, so how much? And he goes, $300, and we'll go from there. I said, how about 350, and I'll pay you 2 years straight. And he kind of thinks, he goes, deal, puts out his hand, and I said, so cash or check? He goes, cash. I said, no problem. I said, is there, a Citibank? He goes, oh yeah, over there there's a city. Let's go have lunch. There's a nice Jewish restaurant. We can get a nice sandwich and a soup. I said, great idea, let's go. So we go over there, and I go in and I take out the, I think I took $3,500, right? And I said, here we go, here's $3,500. Well, that's more. And I said, no. I said, that's for another 4 years. That's for 4 years. And he then kind of goes, and it's cash. And I just put it in front of him. And he goes, okay. So he pulls out, the guy who was with him, he's long gone. But he pulls out an envelope, and he opens up, and it's, a lease. Basically, he says, what are you going to do there? I said, anything I want to. He writes, loft to be used for anything you want to. And then I said, wait a minute, I have a question. And he goes, yes. And he goes, I said, so this lease, you're writing it down, it's an address that's not on the side of that building, the big hole that we walked into. It's a whole issue called, it makes, there's 6 buildings that make up this whole thing. And it's this. So I said, what about the 18,000 square feet? He goes, well, this lease is for the 3,500. I said, I thought this was for the, I thought it was going to be for the, 20,000 square feet. And he goes, well, it is, but it's not. And I said, it is, but it's not? How does that work? He goes, well, the only way you can get into this place is through that space. So that means you have to have access, total control, et cetera, et cetera. I said, that's right. And he goes, if you hadn't noticed, it's full of cardboard boxes. And I said, I did notice that. What's in the cardboard boxes? They're also neatly stacked. And he goes, they're synthetic sweater sleeves. I said, what? He goes, back in the 40s when plastics were becoming the rage, there was a factory here that only made sleeves. The rest of the thing was made somewhere else, kind of like cars. And I'm going, what? He goes, so that's all just sleeves, just sleeves. So as long as you're fine with all those boxes being there, you can have the whole place. I said, you make a little note about that? And he makes a little note about it. He says, so I have that thing for 5 years or 4 years, whatever it was. And he says, the other space, 1,800 square feet, as long as those boxes are there, as long as no one else wants to rent it, because what's going to have to happen is you're going to have to build a long hallway build a wall. So that means whoever rents that space, half the light, and most of it coming from the south, will have to be okay to have a dark, dark, dark space. And there were a lot of leaks in the roof, right? So he said, well, 3 years, pretty much no one's going to want that space. Who knows after 3 years? Who knows what's going to happen to this building? I said, so what happens? What do you mean, who knows what's going to happen to this building? He goes, look at the neighborhood that kind of looked like somebody bombed it from the air. Looked like Dresden, right? Look at that. Well, those were all apartments for the workers who used to work in this factory. I said, what was this factory? He goes, the Chungking Chinese food establishment. I said, what? That stuff I used to buy in the supermarket? He goes, yep. I said, the Chinese had this? He goes, nope. I did. What? He goes, I used to love going down to Chinatown and getting Chinese food. And then I decided to make my own. And then I made a factory, Chungking. And that stands for Chinese King Food, right? Anyway, so Rabbi Ratner and I, it was just like the end of Casablanca, when Rick shoots the Nazi and he and the French commandant walk off in a beautiful friendship. Well, I wasn't close in age to Rabbi Ratner then. I was in my late 20s or mid-20s, and now I am his age, right? I kind of look like him too, right? And so, anyway, we became buds. And so, talk about buds, so he had control of, alcohol that was kosher. He was also sold all the marijuana that was kosher. I didn't know that they had kosher marijuana, but he had, this is like in the 70s, right? So he used to come up and he would, and I already paid the rent. He used to come up and knock on my door and I'd open it up and Kirby would open the door for him. It was a big, heavy kind of fire door. And he basically said, I'm here for the rent. I said, Rabbi. And he goes, oh yeah, you already paid rent. Well, I just came for a visit. I brought you some. And he'd bring me some edibles that were like, knock you on the floor. And he had great liqueurs that would just twiddle your knobs. So he would bring that. We'd sit there all night long chewing on cookies and drinking tasty aperitifs. And I'd make soup and we would talk about the Bible. And that's where I learned about the Bible. So anyone who says, you're anti-Semitic, I don't think so. Because he put me in his Lubavitcher, that's a rabbi school, right? To specifically, there's the Torah, Tabla, Kabbalah. I was there to study the Tabla, but mostly the Kabbalah. That's what he put me there for. Because he wanted somebody to talk to about that, because nobody else was doing that. So I did. He saw books that I had. So, you read Hebrew? You read Latin? You read Greek? Nunai, I missed you. Yep. Well, I'm here. I'm here. I am the Nunai. So I'm basically not in the deep green. I'm in an undisclosed location that's kind of downtown, so I'm warm and safe and yummy. And so, and I haven't gotten, I still have my pets. I have no digital instruments, so that's, I just have this phone. And it gets pissy because why can't you pay $3 so I can be on the cloud all the time? All the kids make fun of me. I'm never on the cloud except once in a while when you're in that restaurant or in the library or the coffee shop or when are you ever going to have a home for me? I just can't. And that's what my phone does. Anyway, how much time do we got left? Oh, just a little bit more. So that was my. So I'm not anti-Semitic by any shade of the wagon. And I also went to school to be a Catholic priest. I went to a seminary, and my godfather was Cardinal Cushing. So I had the most high level, the third most important rabbi in all of Israel, in biblical and, you know, real estate sense. So anyway, so what else can I say? So what's Israel going to do? See, you have to realize it's not Israel. It's not the poor. Yeah, and most of the people who call themselves Jews in Israel, they are Europeans. And in the West Bank, all those people are from Brooklyn. That's why in Israel they don't let you get a 3andMe kind of genetic where you came from, because no one there, I can't say no one, but very, 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 very few folk could be genetically traced back to Palestine. And who knew that 10% of the Palestinians who were there before the Europeans showed up in 1870 were Jews? Who knew that? And they were not just Jews. I mean, there were about 30% of the people in Palestine were Jews, but 10% were the Orthodox. So, don't believe anything you say, especially out of my mouth. So, but you have to have an open mind. And this year is going to be one wild, crazy ride. So, we have a really nasty war. I mean, people are not, like a million Russians. Putin has killed more than a million, if not more. And then who knows how many have been wounded. But I would say maybe 2 million people that Putin has in Russia, his own citizens, right? His own comrades. He's either gotten murdered or, their lives are over, right? Conversely, he's done a pretty good job on Ukraine, too. And those two countries are like almost the same. They're the same people, same everything. And so this war, the stand-up comedian, I mean, it's the war of the two Putins, the two Vlad's. And so this war was done to basically destroy NATO by, having Donnie basically do all the crazy crap he's doing. We already own Greenland. I mean, we could do anything we want there. We have underground bases there that you cannot believe. They're still there. There are people in them. We could stick 100,000 people in things we already got underground. We already had COG there. Continuation of government. That's the place. We already had, Star Wars there. We have big radar installations there. All across Canada, we have the dual line, right? Same with Canada. We already own it. We don't have to make it the 51st state. The little economic thing that we put together that made basically Greenland, Canada, and Mexico one federation, So Donnie's doing all that. He's reading the script, right? And his script is Donnie Chump, weasel, grifter, failing game show host, right? So he's just reading the script. And so one of them is to get us out of NATO in the worst of ways, so no one will ever trust us or do anything economically or militarily with us ever. Our NATO allies were sending military people to protect Greenland from America. Really? And so we sent 8% of our naval resources to attack Iran, right? 8%. But we have 30% of our naval, the biggest, baddest aircraft carrier we have, the newest, most expensive, Gerald Ford, is in the Caribbean. And that's where our nickel is. That's what we're going after. We're going to take all of and turn it into Donnie Land. And little Marco has got one big heart-on for Cuba. So, and that's why we went into the deal of the century was we went into Venezuela, got their oil for us. It's our oil in their land. And the same, guys that he was saying were narco-terrorists, the government is still there. You know, they just took the husband and wife out and brought them to New York, and you know, keeping a black bag on their head, and that got electrodes in their brain. And what that is do. Why did Tennessee Gasser go to Georgia to take all of that election material away? Why? Because the guy with the bag on his head from Venezuela is going to say, well, give me a pardon. You just pardoned a guy who brought in 400 million tons of cocaine over 20 years. Give me one for, and I will tell in a court that I rigged the 2020 election so you'd lose. That's why he got him. And that's why Tassie was there to get that information. And that's going to hit the street in a week or two, right? That's when he really wants to disrupt things. He's going to do that, right? And shortly after, we will have one big kerfuffle in the Caribbean where we take the whole thing, the whole ball of wax, you know, and it no longer will be, you know, whatever they call that thing in the 1800s or 1700s when we say, hey, this is our sphere of influence. It's now, you know, Donnie, the first thing he did was make the Gulf of Mexico to Mexico, you know, Gulf of America. He's going to now turn it into the Gulf of Donnie. So, yeah, I love me my Donnie Chump. So he destroyed every, you know, Douche went in and took out all the servers. Elon Husk plugged them into his brain in Memphis. And basically, so a good example is AID, international aid to the world, right? We fed everyone, we inoculated everyone, but what it really was soft power / the CIA. So a lot of data, information, all of that was coming out. And so, well, and, you know, WHO, World Health Organization, was one of our spy entities. So we pull out of all of that. Just in the 10 months, 75 million people have died because of that. They didn't get their shot, they got AIDS again, they didn't get fed, they starved to death, the babies were born with no brains, all thanks to Douche and Donnie Chump. And he's closed down parts of the government that he had to reopen, and it cost 20 times more money to reopen it than if he had left it alone. And all the laboratories. Why did he go after the colleges? Because that's where our research is done. We're getting rid of that, you know. As the Nazis said, no more Jewish science. And that's what, you know, Jeffrey Epstein was. Basically, his real shtick, I mean, yeah, he got all the, you know, caught all the important rich tech bros and politicians, you know, having sex with chipmunks. And, you know, but that wasn't the real deal. He went in and gave money to all these universities so they would, instead of expanding the knowledge of physics, they were doing shit like going after string theory, you know. Anyway, so all this stuff is going to have the perfect storm, especially once the weather keeps snapping back and forth every 48 hours from being 90 degrees in California and 20 degrees below 0 centigrade in the east, northeast, and then snap where New York City is 90 degrees. All that snow, that 500 feet of snow in upstate New York melts immediately and rushes down, and all the trees go crashing into the Hudson and bringing a gigantic tidal wave into Jersey and washing away the whole southern coast from Red Bank all the way down to where the boss used to hang out. This is all going to happen in the next few weeks, so strap in, kids. And the only way you can really get out of this is because at some point Canada is going to turn the lights out in the northeast, probably when it's the coldest, just because they can. Because Donnie broke the contract. Anyway, and then he'll nuke Canada, and by doing so, he will create an EMP that will fry every chip in all of North America, all of Canada, all of Greenland, all of the all of the United States, all Mexico, good chunks of Europe, no more silicon chips, no more electricity. Parts of Russia, Moscow, all of that neck of the woods along the Baltic, fried by Donnie's EMP to go after Canada. Good luck. Now, don't believe a word I say. I'm just a chucklehead. So, I hope you enjoyed that much. How long have we been on? 80 minutes. And we're not in the red zone, but we're almost. So, I'm going to say loved seeing you here, and I miss you all. Again, you want to talk to me mano a mano, get a hold of me, dudewake42 at Gmail, dudewake42 at Gmail. Go and look at my 3,000 shows. As groovy as this, some even better, some totally in. I am the nun, I am the nun, I am the nun, I see you, I control you, I got to string up Donnie's brain. Yes. So, good luck. Catch you later. I love you guys.